Alright, so we are back for another episode. This would be the third episode in the season series. Last time we covered, what did we cover? Making objects, convert them into editable polys, things like that, and how to navigate. So I thought I would go over quite a large section here today, which would be the right-hand toolbar, which is this entire area here. I have it open now. I'll collapse back down. Uh, and you can see I don't know if I'm going to use all these objects on the screen, but I'm going to use them to help me demonstrate some things. So we went over creating a simple object, and that's what this would be here, and where you can adjust things, and then you can convert it to an editable poly. I usually do that. You can do that a couple different ways. You can go here and you can switch it to an editable poly, or you can right click and go to convert to editable poly. You'll get the same exact result either way that you go. So why do we do it to a poly instead of a mesh? You can convert to a mesh, and what you're going to see is the tools are much more limited on the side. Just a lot less things that you can do with it, and most everything I'm gonna demonstrate is going to be in editable poly, and I just know that to be the most common form for the style of modeling we do here for real flight. So editable poly is what we're going to go to, and you can see at any point, no matter what, you can switch to mesh, and you could get a tool from mesh and do some work and then convert back to a poly in that way. But usually everything can be done here as far as I know. Um, so let's see. We'll go through this whole menu here. If you look up here in the modifier, you'll see this plus sign, and whenever you see a plus sign, you can click on that, and um, there'll be more powerful tools within that, or more refined tools within. And you can see that these are just highlighting these icons. So it's actually a little more powerful to use the icon selection, and we'll cover that in a minute. Um, but if you are scrolled down the list and you just want to convert over to Vertex quickly, you can have that open. You can go to it that way. But for the most part, I select through here, and um, the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 keys will also switch between those if you like keyboard shortcuts. So, all right. So then the next thing down here you'll notice is we have some boxes. By Vertex Selection would mean that if I select this vert here, it's going to select every polygon that's touching that vert. And it looks like it's selected the whole box, but as I rotate around, it's just what's touching that vertex, and you can see it works all the way around. And I'll tell you, I never use that. Um, if you're in an orthographic view, which I just pressed U to get into that, and Z to zoom in on what we're looking at exactly. If you have ignore backfacing, and you just loop select across this box, it's going to ignore any polygon that the it's going to ignore any back face of a polygon, and it's not really super dependable. It can be handy at times. I do use it at times, but you can see here I'm in a full orthographic view. Maybe I wasn't, but if you're in a full orthographic view and then you go to pivot around, it's still selected all of those guys, but it didn't select this because the back face of that poly was facing us, and it'll just ignore that. So maybe a little over explained, but that's what ignore back facing will do. So I'm going to switch over to this object here to explain the by angle, and you can see I'm going through the polygon tool first. You'll spend a lot of time in the poly tool. If I switch on by angle, it's going to, and I select this poly here, it'll select the whole box because I just have a few. I have the edges beveled, so the angle between everything is less than this threshold, which is 45 degrees. So if I switch to this box, for instance, or let's make it easier. I'll switch to this box, and I'm going to use a tool that we'll cover later, and chamfer this edge out. Okay, and we're going to select by angle. You'll see that I'll only select up to the nearest 90-degree angles. Anything over 45 degrees will not be selected. And yet another thing that I just don't use. You may use shrink and grow quite often, mainly grow, and that'd be useful if I selected this poly here, or that poly there on this cube, and I hit grow. It's going to grow out one poly from in every direction. And if you continue that, you'll see how it continues around the box and eventually engulfs it. You can also, select these three sides here, hit grow, and it's selected, or it's moved the selection up by one more poly a piece. So in much the same way shrink would work, it just doesn't work as reliably, I found. It didn't shrink back to our original selections. You can see grew it, and then when we shrunk the selection, it shrunk from the end result. So they don't work quite as well in concert as you may think. You can see that ring and loop are grayed out and not selectable. That's because they're mainly used for the border in edge tools. You won't get them in Vertex, Polygon, or Element. So you'll see that the tools do change between each individual one. So as we're coming down here, I'll move into ring to show you how. Move into edges to show you how ring and loop work. So if I select this edge here, a ring would mean that it's going to go. It's going to select parallel edges around the object. So if I ring that, you'll get a selection that goes all the way around. Another little shortcut way to do that would be to select this one, hold the shift key, and select the next one, and it just knows that you want to ring that selection. So now if we just select this one, we can hit the loop, and loop will select edges in a row here, like in a line, to wrap around. And then again, I don't usually use this, but yeah, if you just hold the shift key, you select an edge, hold the shift key along a loop style selection, you'll get the entire loop. Okay, and I do use ring and loop quite a bit. Going to perspective, this is bugging me. Okay, so next thing here is the preview selection. You can see I have it off. When I hover my mouse, nothing happens until I select. If you go to sub-object, it's going to highlight where your eventual selection would be. I think this is a little more common in other 3D packages. And that's just for polys. And if you go into ring mode and you have sub-object on, it will highlight or pre-highlight edges for selection. The last is multi, which means no matter what mode you're in, you're going to be able to select poly. You'll be able to select an edge, and you'll be able to select a vertex, which I imagine is much harder to select vertex from that mode, or from the multi mode. So like I said, I usually am in off for that. So that covers the selection box here. And when I'm talking about selections, you would think of this as a multi selection. You would think of this as a selection, and then you would think of any of these as sub-selections or selections within an object. Okay, so another little quick point to hit is there's a way to switch between selections that's pretty handy, like especially at the top of this cylinder here. If I wanted to select, even though even though I've got several polys here, you know, and I want to select the entire top, you know, I could select each one. I could select this edge, and I could hit ring, and I'm going to get fairly odd results that don't work. Let's see if I can hit this guy here. Yeah, I got ring on that one, but ring's not going to work for that guy. So the way that I do it is I would just select this vertex in the middle. I'd hold control on the keyboard and select polygon, and you can see it selected that poly, and then grow, and we've selected the top fairly quickly and easily. So remember, moving selections between subselections is quite easy. Just hold, if I wanted the verts for this poly, I'm going to hold control and go to verts, and now I have these 4 verts selected. So that's a handy little trick. Oh, and the last thing actually is this is your readout here at the bottom that's letting you know. It's very important to pay attention to this, because if you were to ring select in this area and there were 2 verts right on top of one another, this would say the 2 vertex selected. If it was in edges, it would say 2 edges selected, and it lets you know that there's a problem in that area, and you can weld those. But you would have to loop. If you just do a single click, it's going to click one of the verts that are right on top of one another, and you're not going to get an accurate readout over here. So a good thing to point out, and let me scoot the bar out here, is that these toolbars, these tool selections here, or menus, or whatever you want to call them, they do change a little between. You're going to see that between element and polygon selection and whatever, they change quite a bit. And what I tend to do is go through once when I first opened Max, when I first installed it, and go to each one and move the menus that I just don't use that often or at all to the very back, and then just have the ones open that I need, which is basically these 3 for Vert. It's just 3 in edges. There's a 4th one open for poly, which is smoothing groups, pretty important. And somehow soft selection got above that. Yeah, so I leave these ones open, and therefore it's a lot simpler. All the work that you're going to do in Max is going to be done with these tools, with manipulating these objects with these tools, and possibly some modifiers. And I'm not covering modifiers today either. So let's start with Vertex here and what we got going on. If I go to this Vertex here and I was to click remove, it's going to remove the vertex and the edges that are there with it, and it's also going to create a flat spot here because that vert was actually holding the center between these 4 verts out. So I'll Control Z that. If I've got that vert selected and I hit break, well, let's see what happens. I'll switch to the move tool, and I've broke this whole thing open. So now all these verts, this vert here has become several verts. And you can see that it pretty much looks like one vert. But if I loop, like I said, if I do a selection around all of them, it says 4 vertices selected. Way to fix that would be to go to Weld, and I usually use a value of 0.01 in generic units, and hit the check mark, and you can see we're back to a single vert. So break will open up your mesh at a point of vert. Okay. Move into a tool I don't even think I've tried in vertex mode. I just don't think I've ever needed it. This is an interactive tool, so let's see what happens. Okay, so now we get little nodules here, and it looks like it keeps quads around that at least. And then, well, it looks like tries, but Extrude would just create like little pyramids, I guess. Let's see what the settings box does, because right next to it you're going to always get, if you see this little symbol, you'll get a box with controllable settings. There we can control height. We can control width, but we can't really control how many divisions. So I don't really know how useful that is, but it's possible. We've covered the weld tool. Well, you can do a pre-selection of some verts. So let's grab this vert here. We'll break it. We'll grab them verts again. You see we have 4 vertices selected. We've already hit the weld settings box, and we've set the settings for 0.01. It's going to be that way for this object for good. So now I can just hit weld, and you can see that it says Vertex 114 selected. Okay. An isolated vert, well, sorry, I've moved way far ahead of myself. So chamfer, let's see what happens when we chamfer a selection here. Okay, so more odd results. Okay, so now I have a problem. I've created myself a little problem here. Nope, I did not create myself a little problem. Alright, so interactive settings for chamfer is it's just going to open it up like so. And you've chamfered in a new square, and you can see though it's created a problem with five polys around it. So that's basically what chamfer does. And what I learned with this was I created an object and just kind of played with it with all these different tools and settings to teach myself a lot of this stuff. So here I created an opening real quick in a replacement poly, and I just wanted to show how target weld works. You activate target weld, and you select the vert that you would like to go to the second vert. So the first vert is going to travel. So we'll select this vert here. We'll touch on this vert and click, and it welds it shut. Okay. And this tool is still active over here in the edge mode. You just would grab the edge and you weld it over. Now the associated edges along the sides here become welded as well. It's just assumed that that's what you were going to want to do. So you can see we have just the edge 59 there and edge 2 there. So okay, so now connect. Connect will take any 2 verts that you have selected, or any multiple vert selection anyways, and if you click connect, it'll connect those edges together. I'm not going to come up with a scenario why all this stuff is useful. I'm just kind of trying to cover the tools. Sometimes you get an isolated vert, and let me create one, or let's see if I can go to. That might not even do it, so I'm going to create one here. Okay, and then I'm going to get rid of a couple edges from it. Oh, because I'm still in the create tool. I want to get rid of that. I don't know if I can even create that. I mean, you usually get a problem with isolated verts during like symmetry or weld operations. So we go back here and see what it does. Nope, it's not really doing anything. But usually it'd be something like this. This vert here would be actually not attached to the mesh, and you could hit remove isolated verts and it would get rid of it. Just can't come up with a way to get that done. I can't figure it out. So oh, let me bring that back. Although the remove will remove the vert like that. The vert that's sitting right here. If I hit remove, it's gone. Okay, so now we move into edge constraints, which is at the top over here. There's a repeat last, but let's see. Yeah, I never use that either. So anyways, let's move into constraints. And constraints are explained this way, that I can move this vert in any direction, and if I move it in the X, it's going to move just along the X here, it's moving just along the Y. But if I want to move it over, but I want it to stay on the surface of this geometry without changing much, I can move to edge mode. And now this vert, even though being pushed on the X, will move along the edge that's next to it. And that works in multiple directions, so you can get it to slide up, slide down. So, and then if you move into face mode, into face constraints, now you're going to move along the face of this poly. So this poly is, you can see that's it's at an angle here. If I move this up, you can see that the vert has stayed on the face of that original poly. And normal, which is it's a tangential thing. It's no matter which one I move here, it's going to move at the tangent of this vert, which is pretty much poking out at a perfect parallel. Wonder if local will show that. The tangent of this vert would be this z-axis here, and that's basically what you're setting it to when you go to normal. So, and whenever you use constraints at all, make sure that you always go back when you're done using it and go back to none, because it will really mess up some extrude operations and everything else. So those need to be not there. I'm not going to cover preserve UVs. That has to do with mapping. So it looks like there's a create button here. Let's see if remove isolated verts works now. It did. Okay, so now I just figured that out while we were talking. So I've created a few verts here with the create button. I don't really know why that button exists. I've never had to use it. But by removing isolated verts, I can take them out quite quickly. Okay, now collapse is a lot like weld, a lot like the target weld or whatever, only collapse will take the average distance between the two selections, and if you collapse those, it'll collapse them down to a midpoint, and that can be quite handy. You know, you could collapse several things at once, making a selection here, and it'll collapse every one of these into a single point. Okay, maybe it doesn't. That's handy to know too. Okay, so it'll just collapse verts at an equal distance, and that's a handy thing to remember to do. But they need to have an edge between them. If I was to remove this edge, and I think they do anyways. I could be wrong. Yep, they're not going to move because of that. Now they will move if I remove the face, I believe. Go back to Vertex, and I'm just going to select these two and collapse. Yeah, they either have to have nothing between them, or they have to have an edge. And it looks like there has been some issues that from doing that collapse. So I was right. It created some extra faces in there. Yeah. And this is the kind of thing you have to be leery of. That you could be creating a model, and in between, in the middle of it where you can't see, it's created extra faces because, you know, you didn't create something correctly. So I'll just select this, and I'm gonna use a tool that closes things up. I'm not gonna worry about it right now. I'm just showing you around. Not really sure what attach does for verts. I don't use that one. Some of these tools I just don't even use them in vert mode, so I don't really understand what to do with them myself. I do understand what they do in other modes, but we're in vert mode here. If I make planar, imagine this is going to do what it does for polys, which is it's going to take the angles away from that and make the make them all on the same exact plane, and then that plane can also be controlled by the X, Y, and Z that's next to it. So that's, we've straightened it on this axis or that axis or that axis. You can see you get a different result. Okay. And also we can hide these selected verts, and maybe they're verts that are right where you want them to be. You never want to adjust them again. That's important to know. That you can hide those. I guess it's important to know. I don't really use that either. You can hide selected. You can unhide all, and they come back. And I don't know. I guess it could be handy. So, anyways, that's pretty much what you have for verts. Now you're going to cover a lot of the same tools here. So I could hit Insert Vertex, and that allows me to go over and just pop a vertex on any edge that I'd like. I know that the edges are selected right now, but it's not. It doesn't matter. I can put them anywhere that I want to. So that's what that does. We can remove them by just clicking here, and that removes just the edges. But if we go back to vert mode, you'll see that all of the verts are still there. So we've lost no shape. It's just that it's not triangulated the way that we'd like it to be. So I'm going to close that back off. Okay, and then let me backspace that vert. So here we are back here in edges. Let's see. Split an edge probably means exactly what you would think. Yeah, now there's two edges here. So if I open this, I'm not really sure why that's not working. But that's just that's created two edges here, actually three edges. So I'm just going to delete this stuff here and Control Z it back. Okay. I don't know what split does, so I guess we'll just move on. We'll try extrude. It's probably going to be along the same lines. It's going to be, okay, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Never used this before. So you can use extrude on it, and it seems like extrude is yeah, you can change the width of your extrude here and the depth or height of the extrude. Okay, and so if we've got, if we remove this here, and I put this edge right on top of this other edge, if I can do that. Select both these edges, I can hit weld, and I've welded them back together. In creating that, this poly's got a new smoothing group, so it looks a little weird. You know how target weld works, same exact way. I can come back here and turn on target weld and click it that way. Oh, I missed chamfer. Chamfer is handy, very handy. I'll show chamfer over here on this box. So I'm going to select this box, go to edges, and chamfer is basically going to give us a rounded edge. You definitely want to do that when it's ended at 90-degree angles here. That you do come into some weird issues, but you know you can add as much geometry in there as you'd like to make it smooth. I usually keep it pretty lightweight. you know, if it, depending on how deep the transition is. But you want to have at least 3 edges like this if you want these all to smooth together. Low poly modeling, that's important to know. If you're doing like a little bottom corner of a fuselage and it's got a little bit of a curve to it, then this is handy to use. You need 2. If you just put a single chamfer in it like so, then you're going to get shading errors for sure. So you need a minimum of 2. You might even move up to 3. So chamfer works like such, and it's a nice tool. Another thing I use chamfer for would be if I say I had a connected edge here, which I do, and I want more edges after I've okayed that. I can go into chamfer, and since I'm on a flat and I'm not on a corner at all, I can set in new edges, and they haven't changed the shape of the box, but it gives me more detail. So that's something that does. Let's go here. Let's get rid of this guy and this guy and this guy. Okay, we're in the edge mode. If I select these 2 edges, I can click on bridge and it will create a poly between them. So I'm bridging edges, and there's no division in between. Now, if that's something I did want, there's plenty of options in the bridge tool in the settings. So you know we can create the bridge here. You can change the, if you had multiple selection, you can change the way things work that way. Okay, so the bridge tools are a little more rudimentary in the edge tool. I usually just use them like so anyways. So you can bridge that just to shut that up. It's not the only way to shut a hole, so okay, so another handy thing would be, let's say I have, oops, I'm going to convert this to a poly. Selecting that edges by doing that control click, which is handy. Okay, so if I go to create shape from selection, a shape is a non-geometry item in 3ds Max. A shape is basically just a line, and so this right here says create shape from selection. So I can create a shape from that selection. I'd want linear. If I use smooth, it's going to put more points on it and it won't completely fit like it does now. And I could name it at this point, but I'm not really too worried about it. And so now I have just an edge. I'll hide everything else. You can see I've got a circle drawn from that. And not that I want to get into this very much, but you can see that you can easily change parameters about that. And then now you can have like a rim or a brim real easy. Now this works really good for like a windshield on that has like a trim piece around the outside, like a free-floating open cockpit windshield, or a pad that runs around the cockpit, or anything like this. You know, piping for a seat or anything like that. That's what this is handy for. So we'll go back to edges again. Not really sure what weight or crease is, so let's just see what that does. Nothing. Yeah, I have no idea what that is. I can edit the triangulation in this mode. So if I do, you can see right now this is a poly, and it's actually divided into the smallest geometry level, which is 2 triangles. If I hit edit triangulation, you can see how Max has triangulated this this piece. And if I was getting a shading error or something looked a little odd, then I can change the triangulation by clicking on these points and just manually change the transition or the triangulation in that point. So that's that. Constraints work the same way. Create's going to work the same way. Collapse. Um, not really sure about attach. Let's move into I guess you could detach that edge, and it's going to select everything up to touching that edge, obviously. So it's just detach this into its own object, and you can see that's how that works. So let's detach. Now slice plane. Slice plane is a two-part tool, whereas you first get a slice plane that comes out, and the slice plane is manipulatable. You can change its angle. You can do something like this, and you can see how it's slicing through the model, through the object. So you bring it right up to a good point, and if you like what you see, you're going to hit slice. All right, and then you get rid of the slice plane, and you can see that now we have a set of edges running through the model, and regardless of what kind of detail you have on this, it'll wrap around all that detail and cut a swath of edges through there, so that you could possibly divide up your model. So we could hit that would be the best way to do this. It's pretty close, I guess. So I can get a selection real quick. Oh wait, no, don't want these. I want this little guy right there. Okay, so now you can see that from this point we could detach this and make it its own object. Stuff like that. So that's how slice plane works. It's not letting me. Okay, there we go. I have to be in that mode. Okay, so we can go back to slice plane here, and let's look at split and what split will do. Not really sure what it's going to do. I guess it didn't do anything special. Oh wait. In slice mode, what does split do? Oh, it creates a double set of vertices so that it's actually split into two. That's not very advantageous for anything I can think of in what we do. So okay, and then the cut tool would be a tool that you can go from vertex to vertex. You can go across edges. It keeps a straight line until you click. So you could click here and turn, click here, turn, and by using the cut tool you can draw on the model. This tool is available in Vertex and edges. Okay, we went through make planar on the other thing. That all works that way. This is the border tool. We're moving into close to 40 minutes already. Didn't expect it to take this long. So the border tool just selects anything that is an opening or a hole. So you can select all openings at once if you'd like. You can just grab a selection across all of them. And then if you hit the cap button here, you're going to get a new cap for everything. So you can see a lot of the tools are the same as edges here. I mean, if not exactly the same, except for you have cap involved. Poly has a lot of different stuff going on. This is where you would mainly do your extrusions. Any one of these buttons with a setting box has a interactive tool. You can extrude. You can switch over to bevel, and you can switch up and then let go, and then when you move again, you'll get a bevel in or out. And if you click again and drag, and then you get another bevel. Or you can just drag up, and then you just have you can just do extrusions. Bevel pretty much does it all for you. Um, bridge works the same way between polys. So if I were to say, and bridging only works if objects are, if the if it's the same exact object. So I've grabbed this object here, I've clicked on attach, and I've attached this object, and that's done without any selection. So now I can select two polys that are straight across from one another, and I can click on the bridge tool, and it's created a bridge between the two. And I found this to be very, very handy. Okay, so that's bridge. Flip would be to flip a vertices normal. You flip this over, and you're not really seeing this, but if you render it, you'll see that that normal's been flipped, and you can see right through the cylinder. So we'd want to select that one again and flip it and render it one more time, and now you can see the cracked sides out. Polys are just a single-sided entity, so they have only one visible side. Hinge from edge is basically a extrude tool that will extrude from an edge that's first clicked on, and you can see that that poly, since it was selected, is going around the edge that I selected. So what I want to do is select a couple of polys here, and I'm going to click on the hinge from edge, and I'm going to move this up. It's going to hinge right around that edge, and it'll create a neat little extrusion. We can hinge from this edge, and you could just continue to do this and get really weird results. But hinging from edge can be very handy. There's also a settings box with you can pick the particular edges that you'd like. You have the edit triangulation, which we showed you in the other in edges. Let's see if I make a selection here. Let's say select all of these guys, and I move on down here to make planar. You can see it's going to make those edges nice and flat along their average direction, which would be this row. Since there's 3 selected, you select an uneven number, it's gonna be this edge, and if you make planar, you can see it used the tangent of that edge to create the flat, and it goes on like that, with the middle row being what it's flattened on. So there's 5 selected here; they'll all be flattened along that edge. You can also use the relax tool. Any selection you hit relax, you're going to see it moves out. It's kind of relaxed that selection in. You can see how it's not really handy for what we do. It's very good for high poly modeling stuff. Just thought I'd show you. Another thing that's really handy here, if I wanted to work on this model and this stuff was just in the way, but I don't want to delete it. I'm going to select all of it in poly mode and hide selected. So now I can go in and it's not in my way, and I can do editing. And when I'm all done, I'm in poly mode on that object. I can say unhide all, and it comes back. And then transversely we have hide unselected, which would hide everything but what you've selected. Okay. So then we get into smoothing groups. Smoothing groups are something that I'm probably going to cover in its own video at some point. But I guess I could make something real quick here. So let's make a box, and let's give it a couple of divisions this way. Let's say maybe 4, and I want to go over and convert this. Okay, and then I'm gonna grab these 2 guys and inset them, and then I'm going to extrude and bevel them, and then I'm going to grow, and then maybe I'll put a turbo smooth on them. Whoa. I guess Turbo Smooth doesn't work that way. Okay, so I'll just scale these guys in, make an edge selection, and do a connect. Okay, and go to a Vert selection. This isn't working out the way I wanted it to, obviously. Oops. I've got way too much selected than what I want. I want it to be more like this. I'm getting there, I'm getting there, getting there. Okay. So I guess I can only do that on a per basis. I don't know what I'm getting at here. I hope I don't make a fool of myself with this. Okay, so alright, so we want this stuff to smooth separately. So I could select all of this stuff here, and this guy, I haven't even rounded this one, but whatever. I can't smooth over 45 degrees, so this edge, from this edge to this edge, is 90 degrees, so that's not going to give me very good results. But I can put all this into smoothing group 1. Oh, sorry, no I can't. I can put all of this into smoothing group 1. Okay, and I can hit Control I, I'll get the exact opposite selections, and I'll remove these guys there, and I'll remove these guys here, and I can put these into smoothing group 2. As a matter of fact, that's in smoothing group 2. Okay, and then what I'll do now is select 1 and 2, which are finished groups. Okay, and I can see now that I have these guys here need to be in their own group, as do these guys here. Well, I've done a terrible job of shading of showing how smoothing groups work. I guess I should have thought about that ahead of time. Well, you can just hit auto smooth and see how good a job it does, and you can render it, and it does a fair good job. We'll cover smoothing groups in another video for sure. Okay, so that would be that, and one last thing I'd like to cover would be up here under Customize and Preferences. If we go to what is it? Is it in here? I guess I'll have to just explore because I can't remember where it's at. Okay, here we go. It's under the General tab. In Preference, you want to go to Scene Selection here and turn on Auto Window Crossing by direction, right to left, and I'll explain that. Make sure that this is checked, and you click OK. If window crossing is explained by this little button, this little thing up here. If I go to select, say, so if I want to just select these polys here on this face, and I've got this side-on view because I'm, say, in a top view, top orthographic view, and I'd like to select them, it's kind of a hard thing to do. You can select like this, and it gets all of these, and then you could hit Alt and drag, and then that would leave you with just that selection. That's one way to do that from this view, and that's because if you see this little box, the selection is touching the edges of the box. So that way, since I'm crossing these polys here with this box, it's going to select those. If I move over to crossing, it's only going to select things within the selection. So if I select like this, even though it's the same selection, Oh, I'm sorry, I've got Pro mode on. It's the same idea. So if I select like this, then it's going to select those all at once because I've got this to window, not crossing. Okay, so what happens is now if I select from my right to my left, I'll get crossing mode. If I select from the left to the right, I'll get window mode. And it makes it very handy, and it works in all the selection sets, and it works without, just in the object modes. So I've selected like so. You can see it's selecting things that it's touched. Anything it touches, it selects. If I select in this direction the same way, which everything needs to be inside my selection, nothing will select. If I drag it across randomly, it only selects things that are completely within the window. So you can see that I've only crossed these ones. It only selects that guy. So that's a really handy thing to know. So, okay, that's going to be it for today. I'm finishing up here right around 52 minutes. It's quite a big one. So that's episode 3. Thanks a lot.